On the 23rd of March 2020, in the town of Bromsgrove, a large event was about to bring mass attention to this area. It's the evening time, and people across Britain sit down in shock as the Prime Minister announces the national lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home. Because the critical thing we must do to stop the disease spreading between households. That is why people will only be allowed to leave their home for the following very limited purposes.
One of these people was a train driver for DB Cargo UK. The driver had watched the Prime Minister's speech at 8:30, immediately before heading to Bescot Yard, where he was to pick up his locomotive, Class 66, unit number 66057. He departed at 9:32 p.m, 27 minutes behind schedule. The driver continued down the CrossCity line, typically operated by West Midlands Railway for passenger services. En route for Bromsgrove, the terminus of the CrossCity line, however, the line continues on to places such as Bristol and Cardiff through diesel trains, with companies such as RAIB Cross Country, which will become important later on. After passing through Kings Norton Station, the driver received 3 text messages on his personal mobile phone. These messages were from the same family member regarding childcare concerns and the closure of schools following the announcement of the national lockdown that day. The driver replied with 4 messages and continued driving. At 10:30 p.m, he received a picture message about advice for school provision. The driver replied with 1 message. At 10:39, the locomotive was routed from the down Gloucester line to the up Gloucester line before joining the Bromsgrove loop. The train slowed as it approached the platforms as signal Bravo Alpha 7623 displayed a danger aspect. Eventually, the signal cleared to a proceed aspect. The route was set for the Bromsgrove neck. Once the train had passed the signal, the driver's attention returned to the same picture messages sent previously. He allowed the train to coast and completely removed any traction demand. The locomotive was now approaching the end of Bromsgrove Neck, an end of the line with a buffer stop and a danger light. The downhill gradient meant that the locomotive began to slowly build up speed, accelerating over the speed limit of 15 miles an hour. The train was now moving at a collision course speed with the buffer stops. 4 seconds before the impact, the driver gazed up and noticed their speed and distance and immediately applied the brakes. However, it was too late. At 43 minutes past 10, 66057 collided with the buffers at around 21 miles per hour. The buffer stops were completely destroyed and pulled from their foundations. The front of the locomotive left the rails, digging up the ballast before coming to a halt, foul of the up Gloucester main line. The driver exited the locomotive at the left side of the train to investigate the damage of the collision. However, before he could do anything, he saw headlights begin to approach. The train was operating one of RAIB Cross Country services from Cardiff Central to Birmingham New Street, operated by a Class 170 Turbostar, Unit 170-107, and operating under the head code of 1 Mike 87. The train was travelling at around 85 miles per hour. The driver of 1 Mike 87 did not realise the Class 66 was foul of the line until moments before the impact. The Class 170 struck at the Class 66 at 85 miles an hour. The Class 170 stayed on the rails, but now with severe damage to the driving cab. The emergency brakes were applied and the train grinded to a halt just south of Bromsgrove Station. By 10:45, all trains were now stationary. Immediately after the collision, the driver of the Class 170 reported the collision to the signaller, who blocked all lines. The passengers of 1 Mike 87 were evacuated around an hour later at 11:55 to Bromsgrove Station, with the train itself being moved to the station at 3 o'clock in the morning on the 24th of March, awaiting recovery to Tyseley Depot. The Class 66 was derailed by 4 p.m. on the 24th of March and left in the siding until recovery to Totton Depot. The day after this, the main lines reopened, with the neck opening a few days later. So, we must ask, what caused this potentially tragic accident? Unfortunately, as most of these cases go, the problem was distraction. The The driver of the Class 66 was distracted by the announcement of the national lockdown, which caused them to lose focus and not apply brake at sufficient time, which then also caused the collision with one Mike 87. The driver of the Class 66 was also using his phone, which was against DB Cargo's policy, stating, "Personal mobile telephones must not be used whilst in the driving cab or on or about the running line." It is reported that the driver had the phone in his pocket and on vibrate. The mix of having the phone on vibrate and the childcare concerns meant that he felt inclined to read and respond to the messages while driving. His mind was completely distracted, which meant he didn't read his speed or have full recognition of where he was. Another factor was the fact that the driver of the Class 66 did not turn on the hazard lights or commence a railway emergency call, which could have reduced the speed of the collision, but most likely not have prevented it. There was only 47 seconds between the buffer collision and the train collision, which meant that it would have been almost impossible to stop the Class 170. Following the incident, the driver of the Class 66 was sentenced to 8 months in prison for breaching Section 7A of the Health and Safety at Work Act, alongside a suspended 18th month sentence. Both trains were repaired and recovered and are both in services with their companies once again. The message of this incident not only shows you how important it is to be keeping attention while driving, but it also manages to demonstrate the consequences of not following the correct guidelines, which could have led to a fatal accident. Network Rail were also encouraged to review and revise the processes and standards to ensure that the risks arising from potential buffer stop collisions are being adequately managed. We can all hope that an incident like this does not happen again, and that drivers focus fully on their attention when operating a train.